8 Messerschmitt Bf-109s dive out of the sun at 30,000 feet over central Germany. Below them, a single P-51 Mustang cruises at 25,000, separated from its flight, alone in hostile sky. The trap is perfect. The Germans hold every advantage: altitude, numbers, the blinding sun at their backs. The American pilot has perhaps 10 seconds before 8 streams of cannon fire converge on his cockpit. He should dive. He should run. He should pray. He does none of these things. As the Messerschmitts commit to their attack, noses down, throttles open, the Mustang pulls up into a climb that makes no tactical sense. The American is flying directly into the attack, trading his only advantage, speed, for altitude he cannot possibly gain in time. The German flight leader watches through his gun sight and waits for the kill. The American has panicked. This will be easy. It is not easy. The Mustang's climb forces the diving Germans to steepen their angle or overshoot their target. They steepen, and in doing so, they accelerate beyond the speed where their controls remain effective. The 109s scream past the American, overshooting by dozens of yards, their formation scattering as each pilot fights to recover from the compression of a too steep dive. The Mustang rolls inverted at the merge point, pulls through, and emerges behind the trailing element of the German formation. The Americans' 6 Browning machine guns open fire at 200 yards. The trailing 109 staggers, smoke erupting from its engine cowling. A second later, the wingman beside it takes hits across the fuselage and canopy. Both aircraft fall away, spinning toward the German countryside below. Radio frequencies explode with shouting. The Germans are no longer hunters, they are prey, and they know it. The Mustang pilot does not pause. He rolls right, pulls lead on a third 109, attempting to reverse, and fires a 3-second burst that tears the aircraft apart. The remaining Germans scatter, diving in 5 different directions, their coordinated swarm dissolved into individual panic. The radio call that echoes across the Luftwaffe frequency is a single, repeated phrase, screamed by the flight leader to his surviving pilots. Break off! Break off! Break off! 47 seconds. That is how long it takes for a lone American to reverse an 8-plane ambush into a rout. 3 Messerschmitts destroyed, 2 more damaged and running for home. The remaining 3 fleeing at maximum speed toward the eastern horizon. The Mustang pilot watches them go. He does not chase. He checks his instruments, scans for additional threats, and turns back toward the bomber stream he is supposed to be protecting. His heart rate has not changed. His hands are steady. He has done exactly what he calculated he could do. The war will produce thousands of aerial victories. This one will be studied for decades. By the autumn of 1944, the air war over Germany has become the most violent theater of aerial combat in human history. Every day, formations of American heavy bombers penetrate deep into the Reich, attacking oil refineries, ball-bearing plants, aircraft factories, and rail yards. Every day, the Luftwaffe rises to stop them. The mathematics of attrition are brutal on both sides. The 8th Air Force operates from bases across eastern England, launching missions that stretch 6 hours or more. B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators fly in tight box formations, their overlapping fields of defensive fire creating a theoretical wall of protection against fighter attack. In practice, the wall has holes. German pilots have learned to exploit them with attacks from angles the gunners cannot cover, head-on passes at closing speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour, and coordinated assaults that overwhelm defensive fire through sheer volume. American losses mount. In a single week during October 1944, the 8th Air Force loses 148 bombers and over 1,400 aircrew. The men who fly these missions measure their survival in percentages. Complete 25 missions, go home. The odds of completing 25 missions hover around 30%. Fighter escorts are the only thing keeping those odds from dropping to 0. The P-51 Mustang has transformed the air war since its introduction in late 1943. powered by a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, blessed with aerodynamic efficiency that grants it range no other American fighter can match. The Mustang can escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back. It is fast, maneuverable, and in the hands of a skilled pilot, deadly. But the Luftwaffe is not finished. German pilots are veterans, many with 3 and 4 years of continuous combat experience. They fly Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf Fw-190s that remain competitive with anything the Allies field. They have developed tactics specifically designed to defeat American escorts, using altitude and energy management to dictate the terms of engagement. A German Schwarm diving from 35,000 feet carries enough kinetic energy to slash through a formation, kill a bomber, and escape before the escorts can react. The American pilots who survive learn to think in terms of energy. Altitude is speed. Speed is life. The pilot who enters a fight with more energy than his opponent holds the advantage. The pilot who surrenders energy through poor positioning or panic is already dead. If you want more stories like this, tap like and subscribe, so these men are not forgotten. Into this calculus of survival comes a quiet young man from California who sees the geometry of air combat with unusual clarity. He is born in 1921 in the Central Valley of California, where summer heat shimmers off endless rows of fruit trees and the soil smells of irrigation water and dust. His father owns 40 acres of peach orchards, a modest operation that requires every member of the family to work from dawn until dark during harvest season. He learns to drive a tractor at 8, to repair engines at 10, to read weather patterns by watching the clouds gather over the Sierra Nevada. He is not built for farming, too thin, too quiet, too inclined to sit alone and think when there is work to be done. His father worries about him. His mother says he will find his own way. He finds it in the air. At 14, he convinces a crop duster pilot to let him ride along on a spraying run. The sensation of flight imprints itself on his nervous system like a brand. The tilt of the horizon, the vibration of the engine through the seat, the way the world transforms into geometry when viewed from above. He begins working at the local airstrip in exchange for lessons. By 16, he can fly. By 17, he is taking jobs other pilots refuse, spraying fields at dawn, ferrying parts across the valley, flying in conditions that keep smarter men on the ground. His flying style is unusual. He does not take risks for their own sake. He calculates angles, estimates distances, measures fuel consumption against flight time. Other pilots fly by instinct. He flies by mathematics. The older men at the airstrip call him cold. He calls himself careful. The distinction will matter when the stakes are higher than a load of pesticide. The Depression takes the farm in 1933. His father cannot meet the mortgage payments, and the bank forecloses without sentiment. The family spends 3 years following the harvest, living in labor camps, picking cotton and grapes and whatever else will pay. He watches his father age a decade in those years. He learns that the world does not care about fairness, that survival requires planning, that hope without calculation is just another way to die. They save enough to buy new land in 1936, a smaller plot farther from town. He works the new orchards through high school, graduates without distinction, and continues flying whenever he can afford the fuel. Pearl Harbor finds him in the cockpit of a borrowed Stearman practicing aerobatics over the valley. He lands, hears the news, and enlists the next morning, not from anger, not from patriotism, from the simple understanding that this is what comes next. Flight school strips away everything he thought he knew about flying and rebuilds it from the ground up. The casual habits of civilian aviation have no place in combat training. Precision matters. Discipline matters. The ability to process information faster than the enemy can react matters most of all. He excels at the technical aspects: navigation, instrument flying, gunnery theory. His scores are consistently among the highest in his class. But his instructors note something else, something harder to quantify. He sees things other cadets miss. During formation exercises, he tracks aircraft in his peripheral vision that others lose completely. During mock dogfights, he anticipates maneuvers before they begin, positioning himself to exploit openings that exist for fractions of a second. One instructor writes in his evaluation that the cadet possesses unusual spatial awareness and predictive capability. Another notes that he flies with mechanical precision but lacks apparent aggression. A third recommends him for fighters despite concerns about his temperament. He is too calm, they agree. Combat will either cure that or kill him. The calmness is not indifference. It is focus. He has learned to filter out everything except what matters. The angle of an approaching aircraft, the rate of closure, the geometry of intercept. His mind processes these variables automatically, the way a musician processes notes or a mathematician processes equations. He does not think about flying, he thinks in flying. Advanced training introduces him to the P-51 Mustang. The aircraft is a revelation, responsive, fast, blessed with visibility that makes situational awareness almost effortless. The bubble canopy offers 360 degrees of unobstructed view. The controls are light and precise. The Merlin engine delivers power smoothly across the entire throttle range. He falls in love with the machine the way other men fall in love with women, completely and without reservation. He practices energy management obsessively. Climbs and dives, turns and rolls, the constant exchange of altitude for speed and speed for altitude. He learns the aircraft's limits, how tight it can turn before the wing stalls, how fast it can dive before the controls stiffen, how much fuel each maneuver costs. He memorizes these numbers the way he once memorized the yield per acre of his father's orchards. By the time he ships overseas in the summer of 1944, he knows his aircraft better than he knows himself. The instructors who worried about his temperament have stopped worrying. Whatever he lacks in visible aggression, he compensates for with something rarer. He can see the geometry of combat before it unfolds. His first mission over Europe teaches him that training is not combat. The sky above Germany is vast and hostile and filled with men trying to kill him. The radio chatter is constant and confusing. The formations are larger than anything he practiced stateside. The enemy is real. He flies escort for a bomber stream hitting targets near Frankfurt. For 3 hours, nothing happens. Then, the call comes. Bandits high, 2 o'clock. He cranes his neck and spots them, a cluster of dark shapes against the bright sky, at least 12 Messerschmitts positioning for a diving attack on the bombers below. His flight leader orders a climb to intercept. The engagement lasts 90 seconds. He fires at 209 seconds and misses both. His flight scatters during the initial merge and spends the next hour reforming. No bombers are lost, but no Germans are shot down either. The debrief is sobering. He realizes how much he does not know. Over the next 15 missions, he studies, not just the manuals and the tactical doctrine, but the Germans themselves. He watches how they attack, from what angles, at what altitudes. He notes their formation patterns, their preferred approach vectors, their responses to American countermoves. He keeps a small notebook in his flight suit and fills it with observations. The patterns become clear. German pilots follow doctrine religiously. They attack from altitude because altitude equals energy. They dive through formations because speed makes them difficult to track. They break away rather than engage in turning fights because the 109 loses energy faster than the Mustang in sustained maneuvering. Every tactic has logic behind it. Every logic has assumptions. Every assumption can be exploited. He begins running calculations in his head during missions. If a 109 dives from 30,000 feet at a 45-degree angle, it will reach 25,000 feet in approximately 8 seconds, traveling at approximately 450 miles per hour. At that speed, the pilot's control authority is diminished. A slight change in the target's position forces a correction that bleeds energy. A larger change makes the attack untenable. The insight crystallizes during his 16th mission. A German flight bounces his formation from above. Instead of diving away, he holds position for an extra 2 seconds, then brakes hard right. The lead 109 overshoots by 50 yards, unable to correct in time. His wingman flames it from behind. The kill is not his, but the lesson is. The Germans are predictable. Their energy advantage can be turned against them. The mathematics of murder can be reversed. September 11th, 1944. The briefing room fills with pilots before dawn, cigarette smoke hanging in the cold air. The mission board shows the target, Mersburg, home to one of the largest synthetic fuel plants remaining in German hands. Intelligence expects heavy resistance. The Luftwaffe will defend this target with everything available. He sits in the third row, studying the route map while others talk nervously around him. The flight path crosses Holland, cuts southeast over the Ruhr Valley, and penetrates 400 miles into enemy territory. Round trip nearly 7 hours in the cockpit. His P-51D carries 269 gallons of internal fuel plus 2 external drop tanks. He has calculated the consumption rates a dozen times. The margins are thin but adequate. His flight assignment is Red Flight, 4 aircraft tasked with high cover on the bomber stream's left flank. Standard formation, standard doctrine. Climb to 30,000 feet, maintain position relative to the bombers, engage any threats that approach from the assigned sector. Simple on paper. Nothing is simple over Germany. Takeoff comes at 0630. The Merlin engine catches on the second blade, coughing blue smoke before settling into its distinctive growl. He taxis to the runway behind his flight leader, runs through his pre-flight checks, and advances the throttle. The Mustang accelerates down the concrete, tail rising, and then the wheels leave the ground and England falls away beneath him. The formation assembles over the North Sea, 48 Mustangs from 3 squadrons joining into a protective screen around the bomber stream. The B-17s stretch to the horizon, hundreds of aircraft in precise formations, contrails scratching white lines across the blue morning sky. He has seen this sight dozens of times. It never loses its power. The Dutch coast passes at 0815. Flak rises from Antwerp, black puffs that bracket the bomber stream but cause no visible damage. The formation presses on, crossing into Germany at 0900. The sky ahead is clear. Too clear. The Luftwaffe is waiting somewhere, gathering strength, choosing its moment. The call comes at 0947. Bandits. High. 3 o'clock. He turns his head and sees them immediately, a cluster of dark shapes against the bright sky climbing from the east, positioning for an attack dive. He counts quickly. 8 aircraft single-engine, almost certainly Bf-109s. They are at 32,000 feet, still climbing, building the altitude they need for their diving attack. His flight leader begins a climbing turn to intercept, but the geometry is wrong. The Germans have too much altitude advantage. By the time Red Flight reaches 30,000 feet, the 109s will be diving through them. He keys his radio to warn, but the transmission is cut off by static. The German jammers are active. He watches the Messerschmitts reach their peak altitude and roll into their attack dive. 8 against 4, with every advantage on the German side. The next 60 seconds will determine who lives and who dies. The 8 Bf-109s come down in a shallow dive, building speed, their formation spreading slightly to cover more area. Standard Luftwaffe doctrine. They will slash through the American flight, scatter the escorts, and then reposition for another pass. The attack has worked 1,000 times before. He watches the lead 109 grow larger in his windscreen and calculates. Dive angle approximately 35 degrees. Closure rate approximately 150 miles per hour. Time to merge approximately 12 seconds. At this angle, The German pilots have committed their energy. They cannot pull up without losing their speed advantage. They cannot steepen without risking compression. They are locked into a trajectory. His flight leader breaks right, diving away from the attack. Standard response: preserve energy, extend, and re-engage from a better position. The other two members of Red Flight follow. He does not. Instead, he pulls back on the stick and climbs directly into the path of the diving Messerschmitts. The maneuver makes no conventional sense. He is trading speed for altitude against opponents who hold a 7,000-foot advantage. But he is not trying to outclimb them. He is trying to force a decision. The lead German pilot sees the climbing Mustang and faces a choice: steepen his dive to maintain the firing solution or hold his angle and overshoot. Steepening risks compression and control loss. Holding means missing the target. There is no good option. The German steepens. At 28,000 feet, the lead 109 begins to buffet as compressibility affects its control surfaces. The pilot fights the stick, trying to hold his aim, but the Mustang is no longer where his gun sight predicted. The American has rolled left, pulling just enough G to shift his position by 50 yards. The cannon shells pass through empty air. The 109 screams past, overshooting by 30 yards, its pilot struggling to recover from the dive. The Mustang rolls inverted, pulls through, and emerges 200 yards behind the German's tail. At this range, with this angle, the kill is geometry. He fires a 2-second burst. The 109's engine cowling disintegrates. Fire blooms from the fuselage. The second 109 in the formation attempts to break right, but his speed is too high. He overshoots the reversing Mustang and takes hits across his wing route. The third and fourth Germans scatter, their coordinated attack dissolved into individual survival. In 47 seconds, the engagement transforms, the hunters flee, the radios scream. A single American has reversed 8 Messerschmitts through nothing but mathematics and nerve. The surviving Germans do not regroup. They run. 3 Messerschmitts are falling toward the German countryside, trailing fire and smoke. 2 more limp eastward with visible damage, their pilots focused on reaching friendly territory before their engines fail. The remaining 3 have scattered to different compass points, their formation discipline shattered by the impossible reversal they just witnessed. He does not chase. The bombers are his responsibility, and the bombers are continuing toward Mersburg. He checks his fuel state, confirms his ammunition count, and scans the sky for additional threats. His heart rate has not increased. His hands are steady on the controls. He has done exactly what he calculated he could do. His flight leader's voice crackles over the radio, demanding to know what happened. He responds with brevity. Engaged 8 bandits, 3 destroyed, 2 damaged. Remaining broke off, returning to station. The transmission takes 4 seconds. The engagement took 47. The mission continues. The bombers reach Mersburg and drop their payloads on the synthetic fuel plant. Flak claims 2 B-17s over the target. German fighters make 3 more attempts to penetrate the escort screen, but the attacks are disorganized and ineffective. Something has changed in the Luftwaffe's behavior. The coordinated aggression of the morning has been replaced by hesitation. He lands at base 7 hours after takeoff, exhausted but unhurt. His crew chief counts 14 bullet holes in the Mustang's fuselage and wings, damage he never felt during the engagement. The aircraft will fly again tomorrow. So will he. The debrief lasts 2 hours. Intelligence officers make him repeat the sequence of events 4 times, drawing diagrams, explaining angles, describing the geometry of the reversal. They do not believe him at first. A single P-51 reversing an 8-plane diving attack violates everything they understand about fighter tactics. Energy advantages do not evaporate. Numerical superiority does not collapse in seconds. His gun camera film changes their minds. The footage shows exactly what he described: the climbing turn into the attack, the German formation scattering as their dive angle forces them to overshoot. The kills from positions that should have been impossible. The evidence is undeniable. By evening, every pilot in the group has heard the story. By the following week, it has spread to neighboring groups. The mathematics of the reversal are analyzed, debated, and slowly understood. Energy is not absolute. It can be manipulated. The geometry of air combat contains possibilities that doctrine has overlooked. The reversal enters the unofficial curriculum of fighter tactics within a month. No formal doctrine change accompanies it. The Army Air Forces are too cautious and too bureaucratic for rapid adaptation. But pilots talk to pilots. Techniques spread through debriefs, bar conversations, and the osmosis of shared experience. The principle is simple to state and difficult to execute. A diving attacker commits his energy to a specific trajectory. By forcing a decision at the moment of maximum commitment, a defender can exploit the attacker's inability to adjust. The maneuver requires precise timing, accurate calculation, and absolute confidence in the mathematics. Most pilots cannot execute it reliably. A few learn. Loss rates against diving attacks declined through the autumn of 1944. The change is measurable but not dramatic. 8% fewer escorts lost to bounce attacks in October compared to August, 11% fewer in November. Intelligence analysts attribute the improvement to various factors: better formation discipline, improved radar warning, attrition of experienced Luftwaffe pilots. A few credit the tactical innovation spreading through the fighter groups. Captured German pilots provide indirect confirmation. During interrogations, several mention American fighters that refused to dive away from attacks, that climbed into formations instead of fleeing, that forced overshoots through positioning rather than speed. The behavior confuses them. It violates the logic of energy tactics that has governed air combat since 1940. He continues flying through the autumn. His kill count rises steadily: 6 by October, 9 by November, 11 by the time winter grounds most operations. He does not seek recognition or discuss his methods unless asked. Other pilots approach him with questions, and he answers them patiently, drawing diagrams, explaining angles, describing the geometry of reversal. Some understand immediately, others never grasp the concept. His flight leader recommends him for the Distinguished Service Cross. The citation references extraordinary heroism in aerial combat against numerically superior enemy forces. It does not mention the mathematics. It does not explain how a farm boy from California reversed 8 Messerschmitts through calculation rather than courage. The official record preserves the facts without capturing the truth. The war continues. The Luftwaffe weakens month by month its pilot training program, unable to replace the veterans lost over Germany. By spring 1945, the air war is effectively won. American bombers fly almost unopposed to targets throughout the Reich. The mathematics of attrition have finally tilted beyond recovery. He survives. Many do not. He attends memorial services for pilots who flew beside him, men who made small errors in calculation or timing, men whose luck simply ran out. He does not speak at these services. He stands quietly, remembers their faces, and returns to flying. The war ends in May 1945. He returns to California with 11 confirmed kills, a Distinguished Service Cross, and no desire to discuss any of it. The Central Valley is green with spring rain when he steps off the train in Fresno, his duffel bag over his shoulder, his uniform already feeling like a costume from someone else's life. His father meets him at the station. They shake hands, drive home in silence, and sit on the porch watching the sunset over the orchards. Neither speaks about the war. Neither needs to. The old man has aged another decade in 4 years. His hands gnarled with arthritis, his back bent from work. He was too old to perform alone. The farm has survived, barely. The trees still produce. The future remains uncertain. He uses his combat pay to buy back the original family land, the 40 acres the bank took during the Depression. The previous owners have let it go to ruin, the irrigation channels clogged, the trees untended, the soil depleted. He spends 2 years restoring what was lost. The work is physical and demanding and exactly what he needs. His hands remember the rhythms of farming. His mind slowly releases the geometry of killing. He marries in 1948. A school teacher from Merced who does not ask questions about the medals in his drawer or the nightmares that sometimes wake him before dawn. They raise 4 children on the expanded farm, teaching them the same lessons he learned as a boy. Watch before you act. Calculate before you commit. Trust what you know over what you fear. The children grow up understanding that their father was a pilot in the war, but knowing nothing of what he did in the sky over Germany. The orchards prosper through the 1950s and 1960s. He modernizes carefully, adopting new irrigation techniques, experimenting with different varieties, building the operation acre by acre until it covers 200 acres of prime farmland. Neighbors respect his judgment. Agricultural agents consult him on pest management and water rights. He serves on the county planning board for 8 years, never seeking attention, always present when decisions need to be made. Historians find him in the 1980s. Researchers compiling accounts of air combat in the European theater track down surviving pilots and request interviews. He answers their letters politely but briefly. Yes, he flew P-51s. Yes, he was credited with 11 victories. No, he does not wish to discuss specific engagements. No, he will not attend reunions or participate in documentaries. The past is past. One researcher persists. A young professor writing a book about tactical innovation in fighter combat sends letter after letter asking specifically about the reversal over Merseburg. Finally, he agrees to a single telephone conversation. The call lasts 20 minutes. He explains the mathematics calmly, without drama, the climbing turn into the attack, the exploitation of commitment, the geometry of overshoot. Any pilot could have done it, he says. Most would not have trusted the calculation. He trusted the calculation. That is all. The professor asks if it felt like courage. He considers the question for a long moment before answering. It felt like mathematics, he says. The situation presented variables. The variables suggested a solution. He executed the solution. Courage implies uncertainty. He was not uncertain. He dies in 2003 at the age of 82, surrounded by children and grandchildren who know him as a farmer, a father, a quiet man who built something lasting from land that others abandoned. His obituary mentions his military service in a single sentence. It does not mention Merseburg. It does not mention the 47 seconds that reversed 8 Messerschmitts. It does not mention the geometry of war. But in flight schools and ready rooms, instructors still teach energy management. They still discuss the counterintuitive climb, the exploitation of commitment, the mathematics of reversal. The language has evolved. The principles remain unchanged. Somewhere in every fighter pilot's training is a trace of what a farm boy calculated in the sky over Germany when 8 hunters became prey. His name is forgotten. His insight endures.